Well, my father worked in a packing house until they closed it. Stark and Wetzel was the name of it. And my mother was a homemaker. She died of cancer in 1995, I think.
Did you have any siblings?
I have two brothers, yeah, both of them younger than me.
So what did you do growing up? What was your occupations in high school?
Well, I was pretty much just your typical high school kid. Interested in cars, girls, and whatever else happened to be going on. Sports.
Did you have any other family members that served in the military before you?
Well, my father had been in the Navy, and I think he was about it, other than I had an uncle who was in the Marines, and that's pretty much it.
What did your father do in the Navy?
He was with Air Squadron, and he was aviation mechanics mate.
During World War II?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's 83 now. I told him he ought to come down and do this.
So let's talk about your service then. Which branch did you get in?
Well, I joined the Navy. I graduated from high school in 1964. And at that time, they really weren't into drafting. So I went to IU for a year. Didn't think I liked going to college very much. Didn't really fit into that academic world at that time in my life. So I got a job and worked in a bank for about a year. And by 1966, we had started the draft, and I was number 11 on the draft list. And me and my buddies were starting to worry about this, whether we're going to go in the service or not. So my two best buddies joined the Marines, and they went in the Marine Reserves. And I decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go in the Navy and try to find a career or something I could do with my life besides what I've been doing. So I joined the Navy and to see the world.
What made you pick the Navy over the Marines since your buddies joined the Marines?
Well, they were going in the reserves, and I really didn't want to go in the reserves.
And did the Navy have any particular appeal to you compared to all the other branches that you could have chosen from?
Yeah, I thought I had a good opportunity to learn a career, and I kind of liked the water more than some of the other things I could have been doing. Wasn't crazy about being a ground pounder or jarhead or some of those. So I thought, well, the Navy just fit. That's what my dad had been in. And I thought I could probably get the most and do my best. So that's what I did.
So when did you head out for training camp?
That would have been in 1960, in June of 66. And I think it was right before my 21st birthday. That I went up to Great Lakes for boot camp. Spent my 10 weeks there. And got assigned to Bainbridge, Maryland, to a yeoman school, which is kind of a clerk typist kind of job. Remington Raiders, they call them. So I was there for several months, learning how to type and do all this clerical, how the military records worked. And then I was assigned to Commander Training Command, U.S. Atlantic Fleet. And that gave me an opportunity to make rank, so I was able to become an E5 over the 2 years I was stationed there. And I didn't have to do all just the clerical stuff. I got to be the yeoman for the admiral. So whenever somebody in his office went on vacation or leave, I got to fill in for them. And I also got to be a driver for the admiral. And that let me get to drive all over the place, but I had to get up early and make sure his car was polished and looking good. And, it was a lot of fun doing that. And then I got my orders from there to Com Riv Flot 1, Commander River Assault Flotilla 1. Where's that? So, well, that's Vietnam. And on my way there, they wanted us to go to Warner Springs, California. That sounds pretty good. California in the winter, that'll be a nice break. It'll be warm and sunny, and it was cold and miserable place. It was SEER training, survival, escape, resistance, and evasion. We got to spend a month there, learn how to catch anything that would move when you got hungry, if you could find anything. But been enough people gone through it already. There wasn't much left. But, we spent a couple weeks in the survival part, a week learning survival. I don't think they wanted us to make it too long. And then the resistance, we had to go hide in the hills and try to make it to Freedom Village without getting caught. And if you got there, you got a peanut butter sandwich, they said. Never did see that one. They didn't catch me, but I didn't make it to the village either. Then we got done doing that, and they loaded us on a big airplane and took us to, we landed down in Japan or Korea on our way over, just down and back up, and then we went over, and I guess I wasn't thinking, but I wore my whites. And so when I got off the plane in Vietnam at Cam Bay, is that where the big airport was?
I think I know what you're talking about, yeah. We can look that up.
Nha Bay or Cam Bay is one of them. But we landed there, and they got all excited because I had my whites on, and they wanted me to get out of those right now. He said, you're too good of a target. You should wear your fatigues. So they got me into my greens real quick and got us to the Saigon Hilton. And that was right on the main street of Saigon. And they put us out in front of the place and gave us our M16s, which we got issued there. And said, now, if anybody moves, you're just go out there, shoot them first, and then go out and get their identification cards off them. They're real serious here. And so we got to play soldier for a little bit. But pretty soon it wasn't as tense as you thought. You could go down the street sometimes when you got off work. Then they hauled us out to Dong Tam, where we were going to catch our ships. And we got to stay there for probably a week, just getting all indoctrinated to in-country stuff. Sleeping in bunkers and getting to really hear stuff exploding and helicopters going over and shooting guns. And then they hauled us out to the ships, and I was with the Mobile Riverine Forces, where the commander of the River Assault Flotilla was. And since I was assigned to him, I kind of got special treatment because I was a second-class petty officer. And the Commodore was in charge of this whole outfit. And I was kind of his right-hand paperwork person. And So I had an office and kind of up by the helicopter deck. That's where I did most of the work while I was there. I helped with the psychological operations. We go out on the riverboats, the ironclads, and we go up to different little tributaries and do things like recon by fire. They like to give me an M79. It was a grenade launcher, because they figured I could hit something with that. They didn't, but they put tracers. I was stationed with the 1st Infantry, and the sergeant that was in my office, he worked for the general for their division, who was equivalent to the admiral that was for the Navy side. So he and I were sort of equivalents. So he was the Army and I was the Navy. So he got my M16 out and he put tracers in every other round. He said, that way you don't have to worry so much about aiming. You just look where the colors are going, and that's where your bullets are going. And so we kept me loaded up that way. And I was there for about 6 months, and I got there right after the Tet Offensive in '68. I think I got there in '69. And was there for 6 months. And they say in the paper, or when you read about the history, that the first withdrawals were in '71. But I think I got out in, it must have been late '69, or very early in '70. I can't remember the exact date. When they brought us home, and they said we were with the first group that got to come home, so we were real happy about that. Then I got stationed with an attack squadron, A6 attack squadron. It was on shore duty up in Whidbey Island, Washington. And I got to stay there for, I think it was probably about 3 months, because I got out in March of '70. And that was pretty much it. I was in the reserves then. Well, let's see, my wife and I got married in August of '70. And then we came back to Muncie so I could go to school. I didn't want to do the Navy anymore. And I had always wanted to go to medical school, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that. So Ball State looked like it had a lot of things that we liked and I liked. And so I started working on getting my undergraduate, because I'd picked up about a year worth of college in the service when I was stationed in Virginia and different places. And so when we got married, and then we came here and I started school, I ended up majoring in biology and minoring in chemistry, and I was going to teach if my grades weren't good enough for medical school. But it wasn't so easy, it was so tough this time. It's been very difficult the first time when I went to IU. But when I came back here, it was a lot better, and made my grades, and applied to medical school, and I didn't get accepted the first year. So I came back and was working on my master's for another year. Put my application in to optometry school, dental school, medical school, and doggone if I didn't get accepted to all of them. And when I got accepted to dental school first, and I was real happy. I was giving out toothbrushes at Christmas, and thought that was going to be great. And the next month I got accepted to medical school, and I had to go tell Dr. McDonald, he was the dean of the dental school, that I wasn't going to be able to take that one. I was going to have to go do something that I really wanted to do. He said, well, good luck. So I finished my medical degree, or my undergraduate work here, and went to IU, and came back to Muncie and did my education in medical school. They had the regional campuses started, And I did my first 2 years here, went down to Indianapolis for 1 year, and came back here for the final year. And by going during the summer, I was able to get done earlier with all my medical school. And I wanted to do family practice because I liked everything about it. And so I graduated in '78 and started my residency then in early '79 at Ball Hospital. It was one of the regional campuses for family medicine. In 1981, I finished that one. In 1979, I had found out that I had multiple sclerosis. And I thought, well, that's going to put a kink in things. I'm going to have to make some more modifications here. So my wife and I talked it over, and a friend said, you ought to come over here and look at the student health service at Ball State University. I said, oh my gosh, I've spent my whole life there, just about so far. And went over and looked at it, and sure enough, it looked like that'd be something I could do for a while, certainly until I found something else I wanted to do or fit better. The main thing I'd done at that point with medicine, I'd been moonlighting in all the emergency rooms around, and so I was kind of the medical director over at Winchester, and did some at Newcastle, and scheduled other residents, and I made a little extra money doing that. So I liked emergency medicine, and I'd been interested in geriatrics, and had an interest in setting up a good program for geriatric care. And so I had those things going, and then this thing with College Health came along, and it seemed like it really had a good fit. So I took a job with them and thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go on to something else. And I actually got to start before I finished my residency in family practice. And so I was kind of doing both. And I finally got one finished and really got into the other when I was there about 6 months. And so all the doctors come in one day and they said, we've got to have a medical director because the one that's here now, Dr. Adams was her name, is going to be leaving. And we'd like you to do the job. And so that's kind of a big jump from what I'm doing now, but I'd had quite a bit of administrative training and background with the Navy and what all I'd been doing. So I thought, well, that might be a job I can do. So for the next 15 years, I did it, and then in 1995, I think, they were getting ready, some of the administrators were trying to save money for the university. So they were looking at selling the health service to a group out of Pennsylvania. And there were some people that were not real fond of having things in Indiana being sold to people in Pennsylvania. And so when they heard about it, they made some changes, and I got to spend about $1 million renovating the health service. And so the building that you have now is one that I got to design and put into operation. And then the hospital, part of the arrangement was that they would buy the health service. And that's where the $1 million came from. It was a lot of fun to spend $1 million and leave a heritage for somebody else. So I always blamed all that on that trip to Vietnam. It kind of got me kicked in the pants, and I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. And when I got into reserves, and they learned that I was going to medical school, then the Navy Air Reserves, they were real interested in me all of a sudden, and I had a lot of fun with considering being a flight surgeon, they would take me up and put me in their simulators, and so I got to fly their jet a little bit. But then they started playing games with who would get the new flight officer, and I remembered how they used to lose orders and what a pain in the behind it was with some of the Mickey Mouse kind of stuff from the service, and I decided no, I wasn't going to do that. Busy enough. But Vietnam was quite an experience. At the time, you just didn't really think about all the politics and the history of Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and what their history had been. And getting ready to go over there, most of us hadn't been in wars and didn't really know what we were getting into. The only guys who had been that I met were the ones in SEER training that did they had a simulated prison camp, and those guys had been in Vietnam, and they knew what we were going to be going into, and they tried to make things very real. They roughed us up or put us in little boxes and did stuff to each other that it kind of gave you a real taste of what you might get into and what a lot of people did get into.
So after going through all that training and then going over there, what's going through your mind this long, million-hour flight over there?
Oh, I don't know. We didn't probably really think about it. I don't remember. Didn't know most of the people I was going over there with. We were all going, and we went in, and we were going different places. Some of them were going up north. Some of them were going down south where I went. So when we got there, they had trucks, I think it was, and buses and stuff like that to load us in and to take us, like I went downtown Saigon for a while. Then when they got transportation, they could secure a route. They would take us out to Dong Tam, which was right on the Binh Tre River. And they had used that Agent Orange, I think, to exfoliate it, to kill off everything, because there's nothing but dust on that part of it. But around it was just jungle, and, it was very thick jungle. We'd take troops up to put them into for operations, and the 1st Infantry guys, those poor suckers. We'd take them up and drop the front of the Tango boat, which is a troop-carrying boat, and they'd have a squad in there. And we'd drop that on the jungle, and they'd go about 15 feet, and you couldn't see them anymore. It was so thick. And they were going to go back in there for a week or so, find out what was going on.
Was that your guys' main responsibilities, was transporting them back and forth?
Yeah, the big ship that my office was on with the Commodore was called a berthing ship, troop berthing. And so we had all the place for the Army guys was on there. Then the different ironclads would go out on operations. Like we'd have one you could land helicopters on, and some of them just had the turret like the old monitors. And it seemed like there were 4 different kinds. But you'd probably have to look that up and get some good pictures. If you look up the MRF on the internet, just Google it, and you can get some really neat pictures, because we put together a website for the Mobile Riverine Force.
Is that Mobile River, or MRA.org?
MRF.
Oh, sorry, yeah, MRF.org, yeah, pretty nice.
Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got lots of stuff.
So what were your duties as the right-hand man to the Commodore?
Well, I was to take care of all of his administrative paperwork. So when he had to do, like an evaluation on somebody, I'd type in the box and fill out all the parts for it. And, depending on how serious it was, we'd fill it out, or if he needed to give somebody an award, he'd write it up, or I'd write it up for him. And then I had to take care of all the classified material that came through. And he had a commander that worked for him, Mr. Park. He and I would kind of work together on getting most of it done so that he wasn't bothered with it too much. But other than sign the papers. But he would go out on various operations from time to time. I didn't have to go with him on those. I went out on psychological operations where we do recon by fire, play tapes that said "Chew-hoy" or "Give up." And, then we would shoot into the jungle and see if anybody would shoot back. If they did, we'd shoot more into the jungle.
So did you see any active combat while you were over there?
Not really. Oh, we were in those little firefights, but it wasn't like me and you with facing each other with guns.
Was it still pretty intense during even those?
Yeah, because the bullets hurt people, and we knew that. We got to see that every now and then. But I was fortunate; I didn't have to be in any real hot firefights or anything. How many people did we lose? 59,000 or something like that. Almost 60,000.
It's a lot of people. Did you make a lot of friends while you were over there?
Yeah, you make a lot of friends, and like I go to some of the reunions now, and never met most of the people that go, but I mean it's like we're all friends anyway because nobody else goes through that. Once you've gone through it, then you're friends.
Makes sense. I wanted to ask you guys what you did for fun, since you're kind of on a ship most of the time.
For fun?
Yeah.
Well, we had, alongside the ship, they had these big long pontoons, and they were probably about 10 feet wide, 20 feet wide, I don't know, big. But alongside those, then all the river boats would tie up. And about once a week, we'd have a cookout, and they would bring in tons of beer, more beer than we could drink in an afternoon, and bring in steaks and baked potatoes, and so you could just have all the good steaks you wanted, and baked potatoes and drink beer. Then they'd have different traveling groups come over, and they would get on the decks on one of the ships and play songs for us and sing. That was the entertainment. That was probably the biggest part of it.
A lot of practical jokes on a ship like that.
No, I didn't notice too many practical jokes. I didn't have anybody doing too much stuff.
Everybody's pretty much down to business.
Yeah, most of the time it was, yeah.
What about when you... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They had... everybody got to stay and watch, and that was interesting when you did that because they had these 1-pound charges, and our call word was Kris Kringle, and the boats that were out had different code names, and in order to keep the Vietnamese or Viet Cong from, they called them sappers, and they would swim out under the water to the ships and put mines on the side of them. And they had been out right before I got stationed there, and they had blown a hole in the side of my sister ship, which was the USS Colleton. I was on the Benoit. But anyway, after that, they started this a little more aggressive, keeping them from getting in. And so the boats would circle around the big ships, and at unpredictable times, they'd throw these 1-pound depth charges in, which was just basically dynamite. And it'd kill the fish, but you'd hear that all night long. Boom. And Chris Kringle, 338, Charlie 1, Talcum, over. And boom. But that's about it.
So what about when you got off the ship and could get away? Where did you guys go usually?
But Dongtam was they had a NCO club. So a lot of guys would just go over there when they could, and once in a while you could get a ride on one of the boats that was going in. And you could go over there and go to the little PX they had and buy stuff. And, have some more beer. Everybody liked to drink beer. And they had a steam bath, so you could get a really good hot shower and a massage if you wanted it. It was a break of sorts. But then the people that were working were Vietnamese, and you didn't know if they were good guys or bad guys a lot of times. We'd do the psychological operations and medvacs. We'd go into the villages and kind of health inspections, check people over, pull teeth, do that kind of stuff. It was kind of fun. The little kids would bring baseballs and play ball with them and stuff. But you couldn't put like your M16. You had to keep hold of it all the time because you didn't know if they would want to grab it and start shooting. Didn't know.
Pretty nerve-wracking experience, never knowing who might be the enemy and who's not.
No, it wasn't too nerve-wracking.
Now, you said you worked with the 1st Infantry Division.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any kind of inter-service rivalry with them? You guys being in the Navy and then them being in the Army, or did everybody just work together?
Oh, I think everybody got along pretty well. I don't remember too many fights. Once in a while, some of the guys get into it, but that was a lot of times. We'd had some good poker games. We'd play poker every now and then. Didn't have much else to do. And some of those guys who were in 1st Infantry, they were more out in the jungle and facing the VC than we were. And I think they didn't know for sure who was going to make it back. And so they had a little different attitude than some of the Navy guys.
What was their primary mission that you guys were supporting?
Well, they were just trying to keep the VC out of the villages and from being able to overtake the civilians. Just trying to keep it safe. So when they detected fire or something, they would call in the Air Force. And they would use the F-14s, I think. And boy, they would start dropping their 500-pound bombs and their napalm, and it just. Now, when you think back on it, it's just the whole thing with the wars and all, and what we're doing in Afghanistan and Iran, and what happens over here with the terrorism stuff. It's just craziness.
that was actually something I wanted to ask you about. Was a lot of people are saying how they think this war in Afghanistan, or maybe the war in Iraq, is our modern day Vietnam. What would you say, like, having gone through Vietnam, what would you say to someone that says that?
Well, there are definitely similarities to the whole thing. But you don't get to do things two ways with something like that. If we hadn't done what we did, would America have been as safe as it was? We just don't know. It's too bad that any of that had to happen. I mean, it's sad when people have to die for no reason.
Mm-hmm. How about coming home from Vietnam? What did you experience when you came back?
Well, it was kind of disappointing. That was right at the peak of people not liking Vietnam. And so when we came home, they said, get into your civilians as quick as you can. Civilian clothes as quickly as you can, because there are people that are really disrespectful and everything, and you end up getting in fights. And so people, they would spit on guys coming back with their uniforms. There were no welcome homes or thanks or anything. It was just kind of a bad time to come home with. That's probably the low part of the whole time I was in the service, was that coming home and landing in California. I think Kent State had gone down. So there was a lot of real bad attitudes about the whole thing.
Did you experience any personally, or is this just from what others told you to be aware of when you come back?
No, I don't think I really did. It was just that feeling.
Did you get into your civilian clothing pretty quick, though?
Yeah. Yeah, I just did what they said. Got to come on back to Indiana. Okay, got to be on leave for, I think I had 2 weeks. But that was great.
What did you do after those 2 weeks?
Hmm?
What did you do after those 2 weeks?
Went to Whidbey Island.
Oh. And what did you do there?
I was with an attack squadron.
Yeah, what did they do?
Flew airplanes.
Oh.
A6s, they're the little jets with all the radar stuff in them. And it was cool.
Was that more of a training camp?
No, they were on shore leave. The crews that go out on the carriers go out for like 6 months at a time. It's typical. And at the time I was stationed with this squadron, they were on shore duty. So I got to see the Great Northwest. It's very pretty.
Did you have any problems readjusting to a civilian life after spending all that time over there?
No, I just enjoyed it. Some lady had a 1949 or 50 Lincoln, and I bought it for about $100. And I got up to Whidbey Island and had a lot of fun driving it. It had I wish I still had it. It had suicide doors, flathead V8, overdrive. It was cool.
You talked about how going to Vietnam had kind of saying, getting over there and saying, well, this really isn't for me, and that's why you went to the medical field, kind of. How would you say that the wartime experience did affect your life and over the span of your life?
I don't know if it did or not. It probably does in ways that you're not aware of. And, well, gee, I did that because I was in Vietnam. Just do anything about it.
What about just from the military in general? Did you get any life lessons just from being in the military and learning the discipline?
I think I probably did, yeah. I think I learned how to be more disciplined with myself. I think I appreciated more what we have than perhaps after seeing what other countries and people don't have and what we do have here in the United States.
Quite a difference, isn't it?
There's a bit of a contrast, yeah.
Was there anything else you can think to tell me that I may have not asked at this time?
Oh. No, I probably not. You look through the history books and look at the different, you can look at all that's so much more eloquent and complete than what I'm really able to tell you about. I can give you just one little thumbnail piece of the thing, and what I experienced. I was really fortunate, really blessed that for my part there wasn't worse than it was. I didn't have to go kill a lot of people. My thing was shooting an M79 grenade launcher into the jungle, and if I hit anybody, I didn't know it. Once I was shooting coconuts out of the top of coconut trees, and made some shrapnel come back at us, but that was a big thrill. But no, I was one of those people that was quite lucky in what I had to do. But I've never regretted putting the time in for our country. It's I don't think you'll find a lot of people say, boy, that was a waste of time. I guess if we'd been able to walk away saying we had won something and you could see the world being a better place, then that would have really made it significant. It's like our guys now. At least I think they can see things in Iran being better than they were for the people that live there. Now it's up to the people who live there to go ahead with it. But that's whether they want to make the changes or be the way they were before. And we've had a lot of students from Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan at Ball State. I've known a lot of the kids. As the health center director, I used to do some work with our international programs and get to meet the different people. And you would never know there were any animosities from them to us or us to them until these few who want to make everything seem bad for the rest of us. Those are the ones that they need eliminated from the game plan, and there's just no way to do it. Always have a few bad apples, I guess.
Unfortunately.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, I did want to ask you, you said your father served in the Navy and you did. Was anybody else in your family?
Well, my son was in the Navy. And so, for those 3 generations anyway, we've been Navy.
Okay. What does he do? What did he do? Or is he still in the Navy?
No, he was in the nuclear submarines, and he came down with mononucleosis, and it was a form that I just didn't get over it. And they worked on him for about 6 months trying to get over it. And finally, he just wouldn't have been able to be in the nuclear submarine Navy. And so he took a discharge. And he was disappointed to do that. But he felt like it was a great experience, too, for him. Highly recommends. I imagine his son will probably one day be in the Navy. And my wife's dad was in the Navy.
Well, that's all I have for you, and thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your service, and we appreciate everything you've done for us.
Well, it's okay.